feel like a tag today. Let's do the Stories and Tales tag. It was created by Shells in a Book, and if you don't know her, check out her channel, she's awesome. And she would like to hear stories about books on our shelves. And she suggested 8 stories to tell. So the first story is to tell a story about a book that made us cry. And I don't really cry that often, but sometimes you just can't avoid it. And one of the books that made me cry is The Boy in the Striped Pajama. And at the end, I just couldn't avoid crying. If you don't know this book, it's set in Auschwitz. It's told through the eyes of, I think he's 9, a 9-year-old boy. And he's the son of one of the guards at Auschwitz. And yeah, he befriends one of the prisoners. Yeah. The second story is about a book that made us laugh out loud. And I do like to laugh out loud at books, and I do have some. I'm not sure if I ever told you about Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. I don't normally read books like this. I bought this basically at a 2-for-1 price thing at an airport. And I read it in a day. I just couldn't stop laughing. It's a silly chick lit story about an idiotic girl. There's some flirting and stuff going on, happy end, and some hilarious situations. The third story is about a book that made us stay up all night. And I think I've told you before that a lot of my reading gets done at night when I can't sleep. But I think there's only one book that I can think of that made me stay up, and that's New Moon, because I didn't want to go to sleep until I knew that Edward was back and everything was fine. I know, silly, but sometimes it's just like that. I couldn't go to sleep after he just left Bella. I couldn't do that. The next story is about a book that I read with someone, and I usually don't read books with someone, so I only found one, and that's this one by Sidney Sheldon. I have no idea what the English title is for this one. I was on holiday with a friend, and there was this book lying around and there was no TV there, so we started reading the book to each other, and yeah, I don't even know what the story's about. It's years ago, and can't have been that great. A story about the book that I've given to someone? Well, I chose Soulless because I basically think I've given that to 3 or 4 people already. I just love the series with the steampunk world and the characters and the werewolves and the vampires and just everything that was created. If you haven't read that, you should check it out. For the next one, I chose 2 books. It's stories about inscriptions in books. Because I have found 2 inscriptions in my books, one that was not for me. I have this battered old copy, Mark Twain, and it has stories Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer in it. And I bought it secondhand, and inside there's an inscription. And the second inscription I found is actually for me. It's a German book, it's a children's book, Uli and Rike, and I loved this book as a child. And there's a full quote in there, and also an inscription for me. I received this book when I was very, very young. And the person who gave it to me was somewhat older, and I sadly don't have any contact to her anymore, but I guess that's life. The next is a story about a book that I will never get rid of, and just look behind me. I'm really bad at getting rid of books. Even the ones I don't like, I keep. I don't know, I'll probably have to be bombed to get rid of my books. Now the last question was rather tricky as well, because it's to tell a story about a book that I have never talked about on this channel before. And you know that I'm trying to show books in my tags that I don't talk so often about, but technically I've talked about all the books on my shelves. Because when I started, I had Bookshelf Tuesdays. So every Tuesday I uploaded a video about books on my shelf. And ever since then, all the books I have, I talked about, either in a haul or I have a review up for them. So there are not really books on my shelf that I haven't talked about yet. Unless we can count books that are not really that interesting to talk about for you in general. But since it's still NaNoWriMo technically, and someone asked if you will ever get to read my stories, well, you could technically, not this one, but old ones. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I used to write a lot more some years ago, like 5-6 years ago. And I actually published short stories, and I found this book, and it's a collection of short stories of the group I was writing with at that time. And it's short stories about female protagonists written by women. And it's, yeah, so there are 2 of my short stories in there. Not saying they're great or anything, but that's a book I've never talked about. And if you are interested, they are in German. You could get a copy of this book because I found an extra copy that I have lying around. So if you're in Germany and you speak German and you are interested in reading this book, just let me know in comments and I'll choose a winner if there's more than one person wanting a book. If there's no one, perfectly fine. It's really not that awesome. It's just something I wrote years ago. And that was the Stories and Tales tag. Thank you all for watching and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.